44 after the hour here on Cam and Company. Thank you so much for tuning into the program tonight. Cam Edwards, your host, and very pleased to have with us on the program right now Mr. David Adams, the legislative chair for the Virginia Shooting Sports Association. Dave, good evening, sir.
Hey, Cam. This is twice in 1 week. It's almost like General Assembly time.
I know, it's crazy, but, when we get dueling op-eds in the region's papers, we got to have you on. And the Washington Post and the Virginia Times, or the Richmond Times-Dispatch, both talking about this Mayors Against Illegal Guns report, which, frankly, I think is ridiculous. And it shows the deep-seated media bias that anytime an organization, a media entity can talk about gun control, they will talk about gun control.
Yeah, and you pretty much had it right when you said dueling editorials, because I don't think anyone who, even if they haven't read the Washington Post editorial, would think that they would come down against Mayors Against Illegal Guns, whereas the Richmond Times-Dispatch, while I disagree with the point they made about their handgun rationing law in Virginia, other than that, it was pretty spot on that, we don't need new laws to infringe on the rights of gun owners to take care of the crime problem up in the Northeast.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, the Post basically says Virginia fancies itself a genteel place. A fact that sits uncomfortably with this. It's also one of the nation's leading gun-buying bazaars for out-of-state criminals. Now, the Washington Post, I understand. They only have so much space to write their op-ed. But they don't point out, for instance, that every gun traced by the ATF is not a gun that's used in crime. Not every gun that's traced is used in a crime, and not every gun that's used in a crime is traced. And the ATF makes that abundantly clear, but the Washington Post and the Mayors Against Illegal Guns report doesn't make that abundantly clear. So that's problem number one, right?
Right, absolutely.
Problem number two, and the Washington Post never talks about this, if Virginia's gun laws make it so easy for criminals to buy guns in Virginia, and then why is our violent crime rate so darn low in Virginia?
Well, that's exactly right. And, the other thing they don't tell you, and you and I think it was John Fraser was talking about this earlier this week, what they don't tell you is that the guns are used in crimes in New York. The number one source for those guns is New York.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. But, you look at, for instance, they talk about Maryland as well. Maryland has much more restrictive gun laws than the state of Virginia does. And yet, Maryland's violent crime rate in 2009, 589.9 per 100,000. Virginia's 226.8 per 100,000. It's really weird. It's like, the criminals in Virginia apparently don't like to actually commit crimes in Virginia.
Well, that's because we lock them up and we throw away the key.
It's just absurd to me that, they blame the gun laws for this. They don't talk about theft. They don't talk about people who maybe have moved from another state. And they certainly don't point out that of all of the firearms that were traced, only about a third originated out of state. In other words, the state in which the trace was conducted was the source state for that firearm 2/3 of the time.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's interesting. The Times-Dispatch editorial was more a response to an op-ed that the mayor of Richmond had 2 days after the release of the report. And, of course, he's a member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and he was making the case for closing the so-called gun show loophole. But, he talked about the 25 murders that had occurred by gun in Richmond this year. I can remember not too long ago when, at this point in time in the year, we would be approaching triple-digit murders in Richmond. And what did we do to turn that around? Number one, we had criminal justice reforms at the state level. And number two, we had a greater police presence put on the street in Richmond. And now we're down to a number like 25, which is still too many. But the point is, it's a lot less than we used to have.
Absolutely. You've got to go back. As a matter of fact, you have to go back to 1963 to have a violent crime rate as low as Virginia's was in 2009.
Yep.
And in fact, to find a homicide rate lower than the 4.4 per 100,000 in Virginia in 2009. Actually, you know what? You go back all the way to 1960, you're still not going to find a homicide rate as low as it is right now in Virginia.
and you have a lot more firearms owned by private citizens in Virginia now than you did back then.
Yeah, I think that stands to reason. You also have right to carry. As you know, again, as the Washington Post points out, the state of Virginia only has 4 of the 12 gun laws that mayors against illegal guns would recommend. And even then, the 1 gun a month law only applies to those who aren't concealed carry holders in Virginia.
That's exactly right.
So, what do you really want to do here? Do you want to make your state safer? Or do you want to, try to blame other states when a firearm is stolen and then turns up in another state?
Well, it sounds like to me that they prefer to blame states that, A, are a lot safer than their own state for not doing what needs to be done to protect our citizens. And you go over this every night with your deal of the day, and that's states like New York don't lock up violent criminals. They plea bargain out, or they turn them out after a short stint in jail, just so they can go out and terrorize their citizens again. Whereas states like Virginia and Georgia and the other states that they like to finger, we put them behind bars and have real sentences and make them serve 80% of their sentence.
Yeah. Well, do you anticipate, Dave, are we going to have another legislative session in Virginia where the anti-gun forces are trying to, quote-unquote, close the gun show loophole where they're trying to ban private sales of firearms?
They do it every year. I presume that they'll find someone to probably put the bill in, and it's been my understanding there's probably not going to be a stomach for that in an election year in the General Assembly, just like they couldn't get a vote in the Senate committee this year.
All right. Well, Dave, again, appreciate you coming on the program, sir, and who knows, maybe we'll have you on 3 times next week.
That'd be great.
All right. Thanks, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Cam. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. It's